In the last episode, we saw Dagenham try to flatter, cajole, and negotiate with Foyle for information on the Nomad, all to no avail. Failing that, Dagenham and Sheffield have trumped up charges against Foyle, causing him to be imprisoned as a so-called patient in Gouffre Martel Hospital, really a prison, though dungeon might be a more appropriate term. Built into underground caverns, no one has ever escaped from Gouffre Martel, which consisted of halls, cells, and jaunt mazes, all kept in constant darkness, except for infrared light visible only to the guards wearing special goggles. After months of the dreary existence, Foyle slowly sinks into despair due to the incessant darkness and almost full-time lack of human contact. He contemplates suicide by so-called blue jaunt, jaunting without knowing one's destination, as others there had done. But he discovers that through an anomaly in the rocks, the so-called whisper line, he can communicate with one other prisoner, which turns out to be someone in the women's section, Gisbella McQueen, who had turned to a life of crime in order to escape the heavy, restricted life of women in 25th century society, which eventually landed her in Gouffre Martel. She befriends and starts to educate Foyle, hoping to teach him to use his brains instead of brute force. Together, they start to gather as much information as they can about the layout and features of their respective sections, hoping to plan an escape. This continues until Foyle is surprised by an interruption to his daily routine, which turns out to be another visit from Saul Dagenham. Dagenham tries again to negotiate with Foyle, increasing his offer and presenting him with a chance of freedom from his imprisonment. But Dagenham is also suspicious of Foyle's relatively spirited attitude. He expected Foyle to have broken down by now, and also of Foyle's improvement in speech. Nevertheless, he and Foyle strike a deal, which includes the release of one other prisoner, which Foyle hasn't named yet. All seems well until Foyle, ever suspicious himself, asks Dagenham why he didn't use telepaths to probe Foyle's mind to get the information he wanted. Not satisfied with Dagenham's explanations, Foyle says that whatever it really is about is clearly something too hot for a telepath to get near. On hearing this, Dagenham panics and grabs Foyle, demanding answers. What does he know? What is he covering up? Who is he working for? Dagenham declares their deal off, and that he's going to get Foyle moved to an even worse cell and leave him in Gouffre Martel indefinitely to rot there. At which point, Foyle fights back, pulls Dagenham to the floor, and smashes his head into it. Foyle takes the infrared goggles off of Dagenham and puts them on. Now that he is able to see his way, and being in an even greater predicament than before, what will Foyle do? Find out in episode 6 of The Stars, My Destination by Alfred Bester. He was in a small reception room with a table and 2 chairs. Foyle stripped Dagenham's jacket off and put it on with 2 quick jerks that split the shoulders. Dagenham's cocked highwayman's hat lay on the table. Foyle clapped it over his head and pulled the brim down before his face. On opposite walls were 2 doors. Foyle opened one a crack. It led out to the north corridor. He closed it, leapt across the room, and tried the other. It opened onto a jaunt-proof maze. Foyle slipped through the door and entered the maze. Without a guide to lead him through the labyrinth, he was immediately lost. He began to run around the twists and turns and found himself back at the reception room. Dagenham was struggling to his knees. Foyle turned back into the maze again. He ran. He came to a closed door and thrust it open. It revealed a large workshop illuminated by normal light. 2 technicians working at a machine bench looked up in surprise. Foyle snatched up a sledgehammer, leapt on them like a caveman, and felled them. Behind him, he heard Dagenham shouting in the distance. He looked around wildly, dreading the discovery that he was trapped in a cul-de-sac. The workshop was L-shaped. Foyle tore around the corner, burst through the entrance of another jaunt-proof maze, and was lost again. The Gopher Martel alarm system began blaring. Foyle battered at the walls of the labyrinth with a sledgehammer, shattered the thin plastic masking, and found himself in the infrared-lit south corridor of the women's quadrant. 2 woman guards came up the corridor, running hard. Foyle swung the sledge and dropped them. He was near the head of the corridor. Before him stretched a long perspective of cell doors, each bearing a glowing red number. Overhead, the corridor was lit by glowing red globes. Foyle stood on tiptoe and clubbed the globe above him. He hammered through the socket and smashed the current cable. The entire corridor went dark, even to goggles.
Evens us up. All in the dark now.
Foyle tore down the corridor, feeling the wall as he ran and counting cell doors. Gisbella had given him an accurate word picture of the south quadrant. He was counting his way towards South 900. He blundered into a figure, another guard. Foyle hacked at her once with his sledge. She shrieked and fell. The women patients began shrieking. Foyle lost count, ran on, stopped.
Belle!
He heard her voice. He encountered another guard, disposed of her, ran, located Gisbella's cell.
Golly, for God's sake!
Get back, girl! Back!
He hammered thrice against the door with his sledge, and it burst inward. He staggered in and fell against a figure.
Belle? Excuse me. Was passing by. Thought I'd drop in.
Golly, in the name of...
A hell of a way to meet, eh? Come on. Out, girl, out!
He dragged her out of the cell.
We can't try a break through the offices. They don't like me back there. Which way to your sanitation pens?
Golly, you're crazy.
Whole quadrant's dark. I smashed the power cable. We've got half a chance. Go, girl, go!
He gave her a powerful thrust, and she led him down the passages to the automatic stalls of the women's sanitation pens. While mechanical hands removed their uniforms, soaped, soaked, sprayed, and disinfected them, Foyle felt for the glass pane of the medical observation window. He found it, swung the sledge, and smashed it.
Get in, Belle.
He hurled her through the window and followed. They were both stripped, slick with soap, slashed and bleeding. Foyle slipped and crashed through the blackness, searching for the door through which the medical officers entered.
Can't find the door, Belle. Door from the clinic.
Be quiet, Golly.
A soapy hand found his mouth and clamped over it. She gripped his shoulder so hard that her fingernails pierced his skin. Through the bedlam in the caverns sounded the clatter of steps close at hand. Guards were running blindly through the sanitation stalls. The infrared lights had not yet been repaired.
They may not notice the window. Be quiet.
They crouched on the floor. Steps trampled through the pens in bewildering succession. Then they were gone.
All clear now, but they'll have searchlights any minute. Come on, Golly, out.
But the door to the clinic, Belle. I thought...
There is no door. They use spiral stairs and they pull them up. They've thought of this escape too. We'll have to try the laundry lift. God knows what good it'll do us. Oh, Golly, you fool. You utter fool.
They climbed through the observation window, back into the pens. They searched through the darkness for the lifts by which soiled uniforms were removed and fresh uniforms issued. And in the darkness, the automatic hands again soaped, sprayed, and disinfected them. They could find nothing. The caterwauling of a siren suddenly echoed through the caverns, silencing all other sound. There came a hush as suffocating as the darkness.
They're using the G-phone to track us, Golly.
The what?
Geophone. It can trace a whisper through half a mile of solid rock. That's why they've sirened for silence.
The laundry lift.
Can't find it.
Then come on.
Where?
We're running.
Where?
I don't know, but I'm not getting caught flat-footed. Come on. The exercise'll do you good.
Again he thrust Gisbella before him, and they ran, gasping and stumbling, through the blackness, down into the deepest reaches of South Quadrant. Gisbella fell twice, blundering against turns in the passages. Foyle took the lead and ran, holding the 20-pound sledge in his hand, the handle extended before him as an antenna. Then they crashed into a blank wall and realized they had reached the dead end of the corridor. They were boxed, trapped.
What now?
Don't know. It's a dead end. We can't go back for sure. I clobbered Dagenham in the offices. Hate that man. Looks like a poison label. You got a flash, girl?
Oh, golly, golly.
Was counting on you for ideas. No more bombs, you said. I wish I had one now. We could... Wait a minute.
He touched the oozing wall against which they were leaning. He felt the checkerboard indentations of mortar seams.
Hey, Belle. This isn't a natural cave wall. It's made. Brick and stone. Feel.
Gisbella felt the wall.
So?
Means this passage don't end here. Goes on. They blocked it off. Out of the way.
He shoved Gisbella up the passage, ground his hands into the floor to grit his soapy palms, and began swinging the sledge against the wall. He swung in steady rhythm, grunting with each stroke. The steel sledge struck the wall with the blunt concussion of stones struck under water.
They're coming. I hear them.
The blunt blows took on a crumbling, crushing overtone. There was a whisper, then a steady pebble fall of loose mortar. Foyle redoubled his efforts. Suddenly there was a crash, and a gush of icy air blew in their faces.
Through.
He attacked the edges of the hole, pierced through the wall with ferocity. Bricks, stones, and old mortar flew. Foyle stopped and called Gisbella.
Try it.
He dropped the sledge, seized her, and held her up to the chest-high opening. She cried out in pain as she tried to wriggle past the sharp edges. Foyle pressed her relentlessly until she got her shoulders and then her hips through. He let go of her legs and heard her fall on the other side. Foyle pulled himself up and tore himself through the jagged breach in the wall. He felt Gisbella's hands trying to break his fall as he crashed down in a mass of loose brick and mortar. They were both through into the icy blackness of the unoccupied caverns of Gouffre Martel, miles of unexplored grottos and caves.
By God, we'll make it yet.
I don't know if there's a way out, Gully.
Gisbella was shaking with cold.
Maybe this is all cul-de-sac, walled off from the hospital.
There has to be a way out.
I don't know if we can find it.
We've got to find it. Let's go, girl.
They blundered forward in the darkness. Foyle tore the useless set of goggles from his eyes. They crashed against ledges, corners, low ceilings. They fell down slopes and steep steps. They climbed over a razor-back ridge to a level plain, and their feet shot from under them. Both fell heavily to a glassy floor. Foyle felt it and touched it with his tongue.
Ice. Good sign. We're in an ice cavern, Belle. Underground glacier.
They arose shakily, straddling their legs, and worked their way across the ice that had been forming in the Gouffre Martel abyss for millennia. They climbed into a forest of stone saplings that were stalagmites and stalactites thrusting up from the jagged floor and down from the ceilings. The vibrations of every step loosened the huge stalactites. Ponderous stone spears thundered down from overhead. At the edge of the forest, Foyle stopped, reached out, and tugged. There was a clear metallic ring. He took Gisbella's hand and placed the long tapering cone of a stalagmite in it.
Kane, use it like a blind man.
He broke off another, and they went tapping, feeling, stumbling through the darkness. There was no sound but the gallop of panic. their gasping breath and racing hearts, the taps of their stone canes, the multitudinous drip of water, the distant rushing of the underground river beneath Gouffre Martel.
Not that way, girl.
Foyle nudged her shoulder.
More to the left.
Have you the faintest notion where we're headed, Gully?
Down, Belle. Follow any slope that leads down.
You've got an idea?
Yeah. Surprise, surprise. Brains instead of bombs.
Brains instead of...
Gisbella shrieked with hysterical laughter.
You exploded into South Quadrant with a sledgehammer? And that's your idea of brains instead of...
She brayed and hooted beyond all control until Foyle grasped her and shook her.
Shut up, Belle. If they are tracking us by G-phone, they could hear you from Mars.
Oh, sorry, Gully. Sorry, Why down?
The river. The one we hear all the time. It must be near. It probably melts off the glacier back there.
The river?
The only sure way out. It must break out of the mountain somewhere. We'll swim.
Gully, you're insane.
What's the matter, you? You can't swim?
I can swim, but...
Then we've got to try. Got to, Belle. Come on.
The rush of the river grew louder as their strength began to fail. Gisbella pulled to a halt at last, gasping.
Gully, I've got to rest.
Too cold. Keep moving.
I can't.
Keep moving.
He felt for her arm.
Get your hands off me.
In an instant she was all spitfire. He released her in amazement.
What's the matter with you? Keep your head, Belle. I'm depending on you.
For what? I told you we had to plan, work out an escape, and now you've trapped us into this.
I was trapped myself. Dagenham was going to change my cell. No more whisper line for us. I had to, Belle. And we're out, aren't we?
Out where? Lost in Gouffre Martel, looking for a damned river to drown in? You're a fool, Gully, and I'm an idiot for letting you trap me into this. Damn you. Damn you. You pull everything down to your imbecile level, and you've pulled me down, too. Run, fight, punch. That's all you know, Gully. Beat, break, blast, destroy.
Suddenly Gisbella screamed. There was a clatter of loose stone in the darkness, and her scream faded down and away to a heavy splash. Foyle heard the thrash of her body in water. He leapt forward and staggered over the edge of a precipice.
Belle!
He fell and struck the water flat with a stunning impact. The icy river enclosed him, and he could not tell where the surface was. He struggled, suffocated, felt the swift current drag him against the chill slime of rocks, and then was borne bubbling to the surface. He coughed and shouted. He heard Gisbella answer, her voice faint and muffled by the roaring torrent. He swam with the current, trying to overtake her. He shouted and heard her answering voice grow fainter and fainter. The roaring grew louder, and abruptly he was shot down the hissing sheet of a waterfall. He plunged to the bottom of a deep pool and struggled once more to the surface. The whirling current entangled him with a cold body bracing itself against a smooth rock wall.
Gully, thank God.
They clung together for a moment while the water tore at them.
Gully, it goes through here.
The river?
Yes.
He squirmed past her, bracing himself against the wall, and felt the mouth of an underwater tunnel. The current was sucking them into it.
Hold on.
He explored to the left and the right. The walls of the pool were smooth, without handhold.
We can't climb out. Have to go through.
There's no air, Gully, no surface.
It couldn't be forever. We'll hold our breath.
It could be longer than we can hold our breath.
Have to gamble.
I can't do it.
You must. No other way. Pump your lungs. Hold on to me.
They supported each other in the water, gasping for breath, filling their lungs. Foyle nudged Gisbella toward the underwater tunnel.
You go first. I'll be right behind. Help you if you get into trouble.
Trouble?
She submerged and permitted the current to suck her into the tunnel mouth. Foyle followed. The fierce waters drew them down, 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 caroming from side to side of a tunnel that had been worn glass smooth. Foyle swam close behind Gisbella, feeling her thrashing legs beat his head and shoulders. They shot through the tunnel until their lungs nearly burst and their blind eyes bulged. Then there was a roaring again and a surface, and they could breathe. The glassy tunnel sides were replaced by jagged rocks. Foyle caught Gisbella's leg and seized a stone projection at the side of the river.
Got to climb out here.
What?
Got to climb out. You hear that roaring up ahead? Cataracts. Rapids. Be torn to pieces. Out, Belle.
She was too weak to climb out of the water. He thrust her body up onto the rocks and followed. They lay on the dripping stones, too exhausted to speak. At last, Foyle got wearily to his feet.
Have to keep on. Follow the river. Ready?
She could not answer. She could not protest. He pulled her up, and they went stumbling through the darkness, trying to follow the bank of the torrent. The boulders they traversed were gigantic, standing like dolmens, heaped, jumbled, scattered into a labyrinth. They staggered and twisted through them and lost the river. They could hear it in the darkness. They could not get back to it. They could get nowhere.
Lost. We're lost again. Really lost this time. What are we gonna do?
Gisbella made helpless yet furious sounds. Foyle lurched to a stop and sat down, drawing her down with him.
Maybe you're right, girl. Maybe I am a damned fool. I got us trapped into this no-jaunt jam and we're licked.
She didn't answer.
So much for brain work. Hell of an education you gave me. You think we ought to try backtracking to the hospital?
We'll never make it.
I guess not. Was just practicing my brain. Should we start a racket? Make a noise so they can track us by G-phone.
They'd never hear us, never find us in time.
We could make enough noise. You could knock me around a little. Be a pleasure for both of us.
Shut up.
What a mess.
He sagged back, cushioning his head on a tuft of soft grass.
At least I had a chance aboard Nomad. There was food, and I could see where I was trying to go. I could...
He broke off and sat bolt upright.
Belle!
Don't talk so much.
He felt the ground under him and clawed up sods of earth and tufts of grass. He thrust them into her face.
Smell this! Taste it! It's grass, Belle! Earth and grass! We must be out of Gopher Martel!
What?
It's night outside. Pitch black. Overcast. We came out of the caves and never knew it. We're out, Belle. We made it.
They leapt to their feet, peering, listening, sniffing. The night was impenetrable, but they heard the soft sigh of night winds, and the sweet scent of green growing things came to their nostrils. Far in the distance, a dog barked.
My God, Gully, you're right. We're out of Gopher Martel. All we have to do is wait for dawn.
She flung her arms about him and kissed him, and he returned the embrace. They babbled excitedly. They sank down on the soft grass again, weary, but unable to rest, eager, impatient, all life before them.
Hello, Gully. Darling Gully. Hello, Gully, after all this time.
Hello, Belle.
I told you we'd meet someday soon. I told you, darling, and this is the day.
The night.
The night. So it is. But no more murmuring in the night along the whisper line. No more night for us, Gully dear.
Suddenly they became aware that they were nude, lying close, no longer separated. Gisbella fell silent, but did not move. He clasped her almost angrily and enveloped her with a desire that was no less than hers. When dawn came, he saw that she was lovely, long and lean with smoky red hair and a generous mouth. But when dawn came, she saw his face. Harley Baker, M.D., had a small general practice in Montana, Oregon, which was legitimate and barely paid for the diesel oil he consumed each weekend, participating in the rallies for vintage tractors, which were the vogue in Sahara. His real income was earned in his freak factory in Trenton, to which Baker jaunted every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday night. There, for enormous fees and no questions asked, Baker created monstrosities for the entertainment business and refashioned skin, muscle, and bone for the underworld. Baker sat on the cool veranda of his Spokane mansion, listening to Gisbella McQueen finish the story of her escape.
Once we hit the open country outside Gopher Motel, it was easy. We found a shooting lodge, broke in, and got some clothes. There were guns there, too, lovely old steel things for killing with explosives. We took them and sold them to some locals. Then we bought rides to the nearest jaunt stage we had memorized.
Which
Biarritz,
traveled by night, eh?
naturally.
Do anything about Foyle's face?
We tried makeup, but that didn't work. The damn tattooing showed through. Then I bought a dark skin surrogate and sprayed it on.
Did that do it?
No, you have to keep your face quiet or else the surrogate cracks and peels. Foyle couldn't control himself. He never can. It was hell.
Where is he now?
Sam Quat's got him in tow.
I thought Sam retired from the rackets.
She did, but she owes me a favor. She's minding Foyle. They're circulating on the jaunt to stay ahead of the cops.
Interesting. Haven't seen a tattoo case in all my life. Thought it was a dead art. I'd like to add him to my collection. You know I collect curios, Belle.
Everybody knows that zoo of yours in Trenton, Baker. It's ghastly.
I picked up a genuine fraternal cyst last month.
I don't want to hear about it. And I don't want Foyle in your zoo. Can you get the muck off his face? Clean it up? He says they were stymied at General Hospital.
They haven't had my experience, dear. I seem to remember reading something once, somewhere. Now, where did I... Wait a minute.
Baker stood up and disappeared with a faint pop. Gisbella paced the veranda furiously until he reappeared 20 minutes later with a tattered book in his hands and a triumphant expression on his face.
Got it. Saw it in the Caltech stacks 3 years ago. You may admire my memory.
To hell with your memory. What about his face?
It can be done.
Baker flipped the fragile pages and meditated.
Yes, it can be done. Indigarten disulfonic acid. I may have to synthesize the acid, but
Baker closed the text and nodded emphatically.
I can do it. Only it seems a pity to tamper with that face if it's as unique as you describe.
Will you get off your hobby? We're hot, understand? The first that ever broke out of Gopher Martel. The cops won't rest until they've got us back. This is extra special for them.
But
How long do you think we can stay out of Goofer Martell with Foyle running around with that tattooed face?
What are you so angry about?
I'm not angry. I'm explaining.
He'd be happy in the zoo, and he'd be undercover there. I'd put him in the room next to the Cyclops girl.
The zoo is out. That's definite.
All right, dear. But why are you worried about Foyle being recaptured? It won't have anything to do with you.
Why should you worry about me worrying? I'm asking you to do a job. I'm paying for the job.
It'll be expensive, dear, and I'm fond of you. I'm trying to save you money.
No, you're not.
Then I'm curious.
Then let's say I'm grateful. He helped me. Now I'm helping him.
Baker smiled cynically.
Then let's help him by giving him a brand new face.
I thought so. You want his face cleaned up because you're interested in his face.
Damn you, Baker. Will you do the job or not?
It'll cost 5,000.
Break that down.
1,000 to synthesize the acid, 3,000 for the surgery, and 1,000 for...
Your curiosity?
No, dear.
Baker smiled again.
1,000 for the anesthetist.
Why anesthesia?
Baker reopened the ancient text.
It looks like a painful operation. You know how they tattoo? They take a needle, dip it in dye, and hammer it into the skin. To bleach that dye out, I'll have to go over his face with a needle, pore by pore, and hammer in the indigotin disulfonic. It'll hurt.
Gisbella's eyes flashed.
Can you do it without the dope?
I can, dear, but Foyle...
To hell with Foyle. I'm paying 4,000. No dope, Baker. Let Foyle suffer.
Belle, you don't know what you're letting him in for.
I know. Let him suffer.
She laughed so furiously that she startled Baker.
Let his face make him suffer too.
End of episode 6.